Welcome, my dear students of grade 9. In today's class, we are going to start the chapter, Is Matter Around Us Pure?, which is your second unit of your science textbook. Matter, we have already discussed about in your previous class. In your first chapter, we have discussed about matter. Everything in this universe is matter, which occupies space and has a definite mass. Now, what is matter made up of? Matter is made up of atoms. So atoms is the fundamental unit of this entire universe. Okay? Now, atoms, when we combine atoms together, they form molecules. Atoms make up molecules. So what is the difference between atoms and molecules? Molecules are made up of atoms. So if we look at the definition of molecules, the definition goes like this. Molecule is the form in which an element exists in nature. Okay? I'll give you an example. When we say oxygen, it's an element. So since oxygen is an element, it will have only oxygen atoms inside it. But how do we represent oxygen as? Oxygen exists in this atmosphere in the form of dioxygen, that is O2. So this O2 is a molecule of oxygen, and one molecule of oxygen contains 2 atoms of oxygen. Let us take another example. Sulfur. Sulfur exists in our earth in the form of S8. This is the form in which sulfur exists. S8 is one molecule of sulfur. And in one molecule of sulfur, how many atoms are there? There are 8 atoms in one molecule of sulfur. Okay? Now, elements. Let's go to the topic, elements now. There are a total of 118 elements discovered till now. Out of 118 elements, 92 are naturally occurring and the rest are man-made. Now you might ask, sir, how can we make our own elements? Actually what happened, I'll just give you a simple example. During World War II, okay, when the use of atomic bomb was there, so the countries such as Germany and USA, they wanted to make deadlier weapons. So what they did, they knew about uranium. Now what is uranium? Uranium is a very heavy element. The atomic mass of uranium is 92. So uranium exists as 92U235. This is uranium. And in any nuclear process, we use the element uranium. Now when they were trying to discover uranium more nicely, so what they did was they bombarded uranium with neutrons. When they bombarded this uranium, the entire element broke down into 2 different elements. So those 2 elements were barium and krypton. Now you see here, these 2 are man-made. That means we discovered those elements later during a science experiment. Okay? So how many elements are there in the periodic table? There are 118 elements are there in the periodic table. 92 are naturally occurring and the rest are man-made. Okay? Next topic is your compounds. What is a compound? A compound is a substance that is formed by 2 or more elements. For example, hydrogen is an element. Oxygen is an element. The combination of hydrogen and oxygen forms water, that is H2O. So H2O is a compound. Hydrogen is an element, oxygen is an element, H2O is a compound. Similarly, H2SO4, CaCO3, NaNO3, HNO3, HCl, these are different examples of compounds. In every example, more than 1 or more than 2 elements are present. For example, in H2SO4, that is your sulfuric acid, we have hydrogen, sulfur and oxygen. In your calcium carbonate, that is your limestone, we have calcium, carbon and oxygen. Similarly, other compounds are also made up of 2 or more elements. Okay? Now, when you mix 2 or more compounds together, you form a mixture. As the name suggests, you have already heard about the word mixture. Mixture means mixing of many different things together. Okay? So, in chemistry specifically, when we say mixture, mixture is a combination of 2 or more compounds together. That is called a mixture. Okay? What is a mixture? The combination of 2 or more elements to form a new type of substance is called mixture. Simple example, alloy. Alloy is a form of mixture. Why do we alloy? So the process of alloying occurs in order to enhance the capacity of a metal. So iron, what happens is, iron undergoes a process called rusting. So this rusting process weakens the metal, that is iron. But instead of iron, if I mix it with different elements together, it forms a new type of alloy. Example, stainless steel, which you use as a vessel to eat your food. Okay? Now, mixtures can be divided into 2 parts. The first one is homogeneous and the next one is heterogeneous. Very simple difference between both of them. A homogeneous mixture cannot be separated easily using physical process. A heterogeneous mixture can be separated easily. Now see here, you take water, you mix salt in that water. You stir it nicely. After making that salt solution, can you simply separate salt from water? No. You cannot do that simply. Heterogeneous mixture, suppose you have iron nails and you have sand. Iron nails is mixed with sand. Can you separate it easily? Yes, we can. We will just use the process called magnetic separation. So can you understand the difference? Homogeneous mixture cannot be separated easily. Heterogeneous mixture can be separated. Okay? In today's chapter or in this unit, we will focus more on homogeneous mixture. Okay guys? That is your solutions. What is a solution? A solution is a homogeneous mixture of 2 or more substances. For example, if I want to make lime water, I will take lemon juice, I will take sugar, I will take salt, I will take water. So the product of all these things mixed together, that will be your solution. Okay guys? Solution is made up of 2 things. The first one is solute and the next one is solvent. In simple terms, if you want to remember what is solute and what is solvent, remember that solute is mixed with solvent to form a solution. Okay? Suppose I'm taking sugar, I mix that sugar in water. So what is the solute over there? Sugar is the solute and water is the solvent. Now this is a very interesting fact that water is a universal solvent. Now what is the meaning of universal solvent? In your higher classes, you will learn that water has a very high dielectric constant. So the higher the dielectric constant of a particular substance, the more solubility it can provide. So water can provide more solubility compared to other different liquids. Hence we call it as universal solvent. Okay? So I'll just write down the statement here. Solute and solvent makes up a solution. Done till here? We'll try to see how many types of solutions are there. Solutions can mainly be divided into 3 types. The first one is true solution. Second one is suspension. Last one is colloids. The first one is true solution. Next one is suspension. And the last one is colloids. simple example I will give so that you can understand these three terms nicely. If I take salt and if I mix with water, it becomes a transparent solution. That means the particles got easily dissolved in water. So that kind of solution is called true solution. Okay? Suspension, take water, put mud over there. So this muddy water will be suspension. And how can you differentiate? Suspensions are mostly opaque in nature. True solutions are mostly transparent in nature. Okay? Similarly, water colloids. Colloids are those solutions which allows only a little amount of light to pass through it. Okay? Milk is an example of colloid. Your hair gel, hair cream, all the thick substances, they are examples of colloids. Okay? So true solution, what can be an example? Salt water. Suspension example, muddy water. And colloids, their example will be your blood, milk, etc. If you want to know about the particle size of true solution is less than 10 to the power minus 9 meter. This is the particle size of true solution. The particle size of suspension is greater than 10 to the power minus 6 meter. And the particle size of colloids ranges between 10 to the power minus 9 to 10 to the power minus 6 meter. Okay? True solution particle size less than 10 to the power minus 9 meter. Suspension particle size more than 10 to the power minus 6 meter. And colloids, the particle size ranges between 10 to the power minus 9 to 10 to the power minus 6 meter. Done, guys? What is concentration now? There are two words, concentration, and in this you will find another word called dilution. What is concentration now? Concentration is nothing but the amount of solute dissolved in a particular volume of liquid. Okay? So concentration . So concentration is number of moles of solute divided by volume of solution in liter. So moles. So this is a new concept now. What are moles? What is mole? Okay. See, mole is a chemistry quantity. Okay. So what mole is actually, when we talk about, when you go, suppose you go to a fruit vendor, you say that you need bananas. So when you buy bananas, you buy in terms of dozen. So what is a dozen? Dozen is a quantity that represents the number 12 in that. So when you ask for a dozen bananas, they will give you 12 bananas out of there. Similarly, chemists, instead of using one particular individual atoms, they take moles as a reference quantity. 1 mole contains 6.022 into 10 to the power 23 atoms or molecules of that particular element. That is 1 mole. We will go into this in your next chapter, that is your atoms and molecules. But just for this, I am showing you the example. Concentration is given as number of moles of solute by volume of solution in liter. Please write down one question now. The question says, if 4 gram of sodium hydroxide is dissolved in 10 liters of water, calculate the concentration. Okay, You are supposed to do this question by yourself. I will show you the tricks how to proceed with the answer. First thing in this kind of question where you are supposed to find out the concentration, first thing you have to know is that how to find molecular mass. Now, first thing is molecular mass. Molecular mass is nothing but the sum of all the atomic masses of each and every element in the compound. For example, in the question they have said that sodium hydroxide is the solute over there. Okay, sodium hydroxide is the solute over there. So how will I find molecular mass of sodium hydroxide? What is the atomic mass of sodium? 23 grams. Atomic mass of oxygen? 16 grams. And atomic mass of hydrogen? 1 gram. So together it becomes 40 gram. Next step, this is your first step. Next step, you have to find the number of moles. The formula for number of moles is given as given mass by molecular mass. What is the mass given in the question? 4 gram. What is the molecular mass you have just calculated? 40 gram. So the answer comes as 0.1. So number of moles is 0.1. Okay? Let us put this value in your formula. Concentration formula is number of moles of solute by volume of solution in liter. Number of solute, it came out as 0.1. And the total volume of solution in liter, then it's given 10 liters. So what is your final answer? 0.01 mole per liter. This is the unit of concentration. Mole per liter. If it is given in grams, you can write gram per liter also. Okay? That is how you are supposed to proceed with this type of question. Now, I have given you another word called dilution. So what is the meaning of dilute? The word dilute represents lowering the concentration. How do we do that? Dilution is always done by mixing water in it. In labs, when you go to your chemistry lab, whenever you are doing most of the experiments, we don't use concentrated acids. Now what is concentrated acids? Which are strong. So what we do, in order to reduce the pH of that particular acid, we mix it with water. When we mix it with water, its pH decreases automatically. This is called dilution. This process is called dilution. Okay? The next topic is colloids. As I have already discussed before, colloids are those substances whose particle size ranges from 10 to the power minus 9 to 10 to the power minus 6 meter. So these type of particles whose particle size are this much, we call it colloids. Example: milk, hair gel, hair cream, shampoo, blood. These are all examples of colloids. Now, some basic difference between colloids or true solution and suspension. There are some unique properties of colloid. The first unique property is called Tyndall effect. What is Tyndall effect? In winter, when it is very foggy outside, you try going out of your house, you try looking at the sun. You cannot see the sun because it is covered with fog, right? But what happens is, you can see the shape of the sun. Now why is this happening? It's because the light from the sun is reaching our eyes, but in between there is distraction. So what happens is, due to the presence of fog, which is also a colloid, it disperses the light. So colloids has the property of dispersing light. Hence, a little amount of light reaches our eyes. That's why we cannot see the entire sun. Okay? So Tyndall effect means the dispersion of light particles in a colloidal solution is called Tyndall effect. This topic is very important in your class 11th. In class 12, you will find the mention of this word, these two words, Tyndall effect, a lot. So please try to understand this nicely, okay? The next one is Brownian movement. I think you have already studied about this topic before. What is Brownian movement? you can remember the word zigzag, which is related to this particular process. Brownian movement means the zigzag motion of colloidal particles is called Brownian movement. Okay, the zigzag motion of colloidal particles is called Brownian. After Brownian movement, let us jump into some of the examples of colloids. Now guys, I have already explained you what is solute and what is solvent in solution. In case of colloids, we don't use the term solute and solvent. We use the terms dispersed phase and dispersion medium. There are two terms which we use, the dispersed phase and dispersion medium. Don't get confused with the terms. Dispersed phase means solute, dispersion medium means solvent. Just in the case of colloids, we use these two terms here. Okay? Now guys, let's look some of the examples, colloidal solution examples. All these examples are given in tabular form, that is in your page number 18 of your NCERT textbook, table number 2.1. I have taken out few examples from there. Liquid in gas solution. Okay, suppose dispersed phase is liquid, dispersion medium is gas. Okay, so what kind of example does it form? Fog. So fog is a colloid in which the dispersed phase is liquid, the dispersion medium is gas. Similarly, solid and liquid solutions are mud. That means you will take solid, you will have a liquid, you will mix the solid in the liquid. You get example mud out of it. Okay, so these are a few examples, and please, when you are making the notes of this chapter, you are supposed to make the table and paste it, or you can copy it down in your copy. Okay, these examples may come in 1 mark in your exam. That's why it's important. Please take a note of it. Now, jumping on to your next topic, let's go and try to understand some of the separation techniques. What is the meaning of the word separate? Separate means to classify according to their properties. Okay, or to remove according to their properties. Okay, now to understand separation, you have to understand two things. Liquids, based on their polarity, liquids are of two types: miscible liquids, immiscible liquids. Now what is miscible and immiscible? Miscible liquids are those liquids which can get mixed. For example, if I take lime water or lime juice, and if I take water, both can be mixed thoroughly with each other. Those type of liquids are called miscible liquids. Your hint, you can remember, like dissolves like. And what are immiscible liquids? Immiscible liquids, best example will be oil and water. Oil and water cannot be mixed with each other because both are immiscible liquids. Oil and water. Now, we are going to start with immiscible liquids. That means, suppose I have a solution of oil and water. How am I going to separate that particular solution? Okay? After that, we will go for miscible liquids. The first separation process that we are going to do is called separating funnel. Separation process. The first one is your separating funnel. This process is used to separate two immiscible liquids. The diagram is there in the textbook, page number 20, figure number 2.6. You're supposed to copy down the diagram from there. I will show you a rough diagram here. So basically, in this process, you use a funnel. It's a very simple process, okay guys? What we do is that we put the solution inside the funnel. So since both are immiscible liquids, oil and water, oil will be on top of water. Yes or no? Suppose I store oil and water in a vessel, then obviously oil will come on top. So in this container, the top part, this shaded region is your oil, and the bottom part is your water. And in this apparatus, on the bottom side there is a cork. What does this cork do? Cork acts as a tap. It can open the system, it can close the system. So what happens is, when the solution is kept inside the separating funnel, the cork is opened. Once it is open, the entire solution starts coming down drop by drop. Now what happens is, this solution starts coming down. As soon as the entire water is cleared out of the area, oil comes here, the cork is closed that time. I hope you got the point. Our objective is to remove this oil from the water. So once the water is removed, only oil is remaining on top. That's how you separate oil and water. And this is called separating funnel. Okay? If in your exam question comes, it might come for 2 marks. You will have to draw the diagram of separating funnel, which I already mentioned, page number 20, figure 2.6. Plus, about the working of the separating funnel. So how are you going to write about it? You can use your own imagination, own words to describe it. Roughly, I'm concluding this topic. It is used to separate two immiscible liquids. Example, oil and water. Out of two liquids, one liquid, since it cannot be mixed with the other one, it will be on top. So oil is on top here, water is in bottom. My objective is to remove this water from oil. So what do? I open up the cork. Once the cork is open, the entire solution starts falling downside. So as soon as this water gets over, that means water got emptied out, only oil is remaining. At that moment, I will switch off the cork. So thus, water came out, oil will be remaining on top. Am I clear, guys? Very good. Okay, next. Let's go to the next process. The next process we will use to separate miscible liquids. Immiscible is done. Next process we will go for miscible liquids. This process is called distillation. Distillation is one of the most major chemical process in any industry. It is one of the most important process, and it's a very simple process also. Okay? So what is distillation? I'll write down the definition here. Separation of two miscible liquids based on their boiling points is called distillation. Am I clear? The figure for distillation, which is also again very important, you will find in page number 29, page number 21, figure 2.9. Please go through your textbook, copy down the figure from there, okay? I'll show you how the process works. I'll make it clear for you. Now, this is the definition. The principle, what is the principle of distillation? The principle of distillation is that the separation technique is based on the fact that one liquid will have a lower boiling point than the other one. Obviously, different substances has different melting point or different boiling point. No two substances can have the same boiling point. So we will take advantage of that fact and remove this. Okay? Now, example. Suppose I have a solution containing alcohol and water. I have a solution. I have this vessel in front of me. In that particular vessel, I have a solution containing alcohol and water. Now, can you separate it with just simple process? No, you cannot separate it. Alcohol gets mixed with water very easily. How can you separate it after that? So what do? We use the process of distillation. So now, what happens in this process? First, there will be a vessel. In this vessel, the required solution is kept. So the solution over here is alcohol plus water. So this is the solution. Okay? It is closed from the top. Okay. Now, what we do is we heat this solution from the bottom. This is a spirit lamp, for example. We heat this solution from the bottom. After heating the solution, since between alcohol and water, alcohol has lower boiling point. For example, if the boiling point of water is 100 degrees Celsius, alcohol boiling point comes out around 60 degrees. Just a rough example. So that means as soon as the temperature reaches 60 degrees Celsius, this alcohol will start boiling up. That means it will start evaporating. So the temperature when it reaches 60, alcohol starts to evaporate. But only alcohol, because the boiling point of water has not reached yet. We are doing this in a controlled environment. I want this alcohol to go out, not the water part. So that's why temperature is kept in a contained environment. So as soon as it reaches that particular temperature, alcohol starts boiling away. So it takes the form of vapor, because whenever you boil any liquid, it becomes vapor. It becomes vapor. This is alcohol vapor, which is taken to a different chamber now. Now see what's happening here. Alcohol and water was there. I boiled it. Alcohol evaporated first, it got away. After it went away, it was carried away to some other vessel. Now what is my objective of carrying it to some other vessel? Here comes the main part. In this part, there is a process called condensation. If you recall your previous chapter, condensation is a process by which a gas can be converted into liquid by lowering the temperature. So since we are using the process of condensation here, obviously this part of the apparatus contains low temperature equipments. So when this gas, which is alcohol right now, passes from this side, this gas is getting converted into alcohol droplets. That means liquid. So hence later, after the process of condensation is done, here the liquid alcohol is obtained. This is how alcohol and water can be separated from each other. And this process is called distillation. Okay guys? Is it okay? Okay, thank you so much. Next. The next process is again related to distillation only. The next process is called fractional distillation. Fractional distillation. For fractional distillation, you can see the figure in page number 22, figure 2.10. Please refer to that figure. Now, what is the difference between distillation and fractional distillation? See guys, principle is same. In both the process, we are separating the components of a paraffin. Now, these are petroleum products. The entire thing is called petroleum. Now, how do we separate petrol, diesel, paraffin, wax, all these things from the entire petroleum part? We use the process of fractional distillation. So whenever you hear this word fractional distillation, remember that it is used to separate larger quantities of a mixture, okay, which is made up of many different things. So we use the process of fractional distillation. These are the only three processes which is important in your class 9. One more process is there, which is your sublimation. I'm not going that deep into this process because I have already explained you sublimation in your previous class. Conversion of solid into gas without entering the liquid state is called sublimation. So now what is the use of this process? Listen here. Suppose I have a mixture of, I'm explaining you the topic of sublimation. Suppose I have a mixture of ammonium chloride, NH4Cl is called ammonium chloride, and sodium chloride. Both are white in color. Okay? Sodium chloride, small crystals, ammonium chloride, white crystals. But they are very fine crystals. Hence, you cannot use any physical process to separate it. So what do? We let it undergo the process of sublimation. Now out of sodium chloride and ammonium chloride can undergo sublimation very easily. So what do you have to do to separate both of them? Just take both the substances in a plate, keep it out for some days, automatically ammonium chloride will go vanish away. That's how you separate it. Okay guys? Moving on to the next part. What is the meaning of the word pure? Till now in this chapter we have studied about mixture. Mixtures are impure substances. I'm repeating this again. Mixtures are impure substances. Impure doesn't mean it is bad. No, I don't mean that it's bad. Impure means that it is made up of many different things together. When I use the word pure, pure means which is made up of similar type of particles in it. Example, the 118 elements in the periodic table which exist in this earth, all are pure substances. Now, why are they pure? Because if I take hydrogen as an element, if I take carbon as an element, oxygen as an element, it will contain similar atoms inside it. As I have already explained you the meaning of the word pure, so what are pure substances? Pure substances are those substances which are made up of only one type of atoms. For example, oxygen is a pure substance. Hydrogen is a pure substance. Nitrogen, all the 118 elements are referred to as pure substances because all these elements have similar atoms inside it. Okay? Now, these pure substances, there is the 118 elements can be divided into three parts based on their properties. So what are those three parts? We can divide these pure substances into metals, non-metals, and metalloids. Now on this earth, the number of metals is maximum. We can find maximum metal on our planet. So when we look at the properties of metals, metals are sonorous, metals show luster, metals have high thermal and electrical conductivity. Metals are malleable and metals are ductile. You have already studied about all these terms in your previous classes, but still I will explain you one more time. What is the meaning of the word sonorous? Sonorous refers to the metallic sound that metal can produce. Luster refers to the shine that metal contains. Take example of iron and take example of wood. Iron has more shine in comparison to wood or any other non-metals. High thermal electrical conductivity. This is a very important property, guys. See, for cooking, we use metallic vessels. We don't use wood to cook. Why? Because wood is a bad conductor of heat. But when we take metallic vessels, those are good conductor of heat. That's why we use those for cooking. Similarly, in case of making wires, we don't make wires out of non-metal substances. We make wire out of copper, out of aluminum, because these metals have high electrical conductivity. Okay? Malleable. What is the meaning of the word malleable? Malleable means the property by which metals can be beaten into thin sheets. That is called malleability. Okay? Ductile means metals can be converted into thin wires. This property is called ductility. If you want to look at the properties of non-metal, just write the opposite of all these properties. All the metallic properties are opposite in non-metallic properties. Okay? The last term is your metalloids. What are metalloids now? Metalloids are those substances which behaves as a metal at higher temperatures and which behaves as a non-metal at lower temperatures. That means metalloids show the properties of both metals and non-metals. I will give you a very simple example, germanium. Germanium is also a semiconductor. Why do we call it a semiconductor? Because at higher temperature, germanium acts as a conductor, which is a property of metal. But at lower temperature, it acts as a insulator, which is a property of
non-metal. So can you see now? Metallic property conductor, non-metallic property insulator. Both are together under different conditions. That's why it is called metalloids. Okay? Now, there is a table given in your textbook referring to the differences between elements and compounds. Please go through that table nicely. Elements are pure substances. Compounds are made up of elements, which I have already explained you before. Okay? With this, I bring it to the end of this chapter. I hope you stay safe. If you are having any doubts, any problems, please don't hesitate to ask me. Please ask me as much as you can so that all your chapter queries are clear. Thank you. I hope you have a good day.